We have some major news right now. Today is a historic day. Hundreds of Republicans in the House of Representatives are set to rebuke the President of the United States after months of concealing the Epstein files. They are set to vote to release them, and we're expecting more than 100 to break from Donald Trump, potentially a unanimous vote. And this morning, I sat down with Annie Farmer, one of the Epstein survivors, one of the women who took down Ghislaine Maxwell, and she has a message to Donald Trump and House Republicans. Release the file. She tells me she hasn't met with Donald Trump. They haven't reached out. The Attorney General has not reached out, but that her and her sister Maria Farmer want the files released. We talk about why there's over 1,000 victims in this case and why many of them have remained private to this day, and what the public needs to know as the House of Representatives votes, a historic vote, a vote that is a long time coming. So I want you to help me spread Annie's voice across the world. So like, comment, share, and subscribe. Get this everywhere, because today is a historic moment in the fight for justice, and the fight for accountability, and in the fight for transparency. And with that, this is my interview with Annie Farmer. So excited and truly honored today to be joined by Annie Farmer, who is one of the survivors who will be at the Capitol today demanding that the House of Representatives release the files. Annie, how are you feeling today?
It's really hard to put into words, Aaron. I'm quite tired, but I think there is this energy that all of us have from being here and being on the precipice of what feels like a really historic moment. And I feel emotional, because I'm thinking a lot about the people that can't be here with us for various reasons. Of course, my sister, Maria Farmer, is really with me in spirit here, and I'm thinking of her so much and her long fight for justice in this case. I'm thinking about Virginia Giuffre. Um, I've been thinking this morning about Carolyn Adriano, who was, testified in the Maxwell trial and was a huge part of bringing justice in that case, and lost her life. And so there's a lot there's a lot weighing on me this morning, but I'm eager to be with other survivors and be there at the Capitol.
Well, for those of us who don't know your story and Maria's story, just give us a bit of an overview. Just tell us a little more.
Yeah. I think, it's I was 16 years old when my sister was 25. She was working in New York as an artist. She went to graduate school there. She met Epstein through her program and began working for him procuring art. And that's how they began conversations. And he was asking about her family, and she mentioned me, and she was proud of me. And I was looking at schools, and so that's how this conversation began. About I could help her. I could help her pay for college. That's the kind of thing I like to do. And so, from there, he ended up flying me to New York. I met him there, and then ultimately he flew me to the Zorro Ranch, with where Maxwell was as well. And I had those two encounters with him.
Mhm.
But it was what we hear about in this case, right? Grooming, pushing boundaries, and then abuse. And so I didn't tell anyone because I was 16. And I think it's something so many people, don't understand, is why people, don't share. But it's much more common that they don't share about those experiences, right? And it's confusing. He was someone I thought, wow, this, everyone admires him so much. How this doesn't make sense to me, right? Like it was really hard to understand. And so it was only when Maria was then unfortunately harmed by them and assaulted and had photos of her work stolen that she realized, of course, what was wrong, and ended up reporting them. And so her fight for justice really began then with initial reports to the NYPD and the FBI. And as we know, those were not followed up on. And so she's fought for a long time to bring transparency to this case.
Now, you talk about the FBI reports, the interviews. Have those ever been released publicly, or are those part of the files that the Department of Justice has right now?
Yeah, so the only thing that we've received that has been released, I can't remember the year, but there was a lawsuit for, to get the files released, where there were some heavily redacted things released, including, I believe, a portion of the 2006 interview when the FBI came to her and was begging her to be a witness in their ongoing. At that point, we thought there was going to be a big trial and Epstein would finally be put behind bars, right? And they released a portion of that interview that was so heavily redacted. It was definitely not transparent, but for those people that were familiar with the case, you could see the references to her earlier reports. So that's been the most that has been released in regards to that. She's made many FOIA requests. Journalists have made many FOIA requests for those documents, and they've been denied. I think most recently, her attorney requested those documents and was told they'd get back to her in November 2027.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You mentioned that Maria won't be there with you all on Capitol Hill today. Could you talk a little bit more about why?
Yeah, yeah. Maria has faced a lot of health challenges. Really since the time that this all occurred, I'd say that the stress of all this has led to some significant, both chronic and acute health problems. But because of a brain tumor diagnosis in 2019, she was told at that time that she should not fly anymore because of the pressure, and she hasn't flown since that time. And it's just travel in general is quite difficult for her. So she can't be here, but we are very much all thinking about her, and I'm here trying to represent her as well.
Well, and to any member of Congress who's voting today watching this, what is your message and Maria's message to them in this moment?
Um, it's time to do the right thing. It's time to release all the files. We have, I think, been betrayed by the government so many times. It's hard to trust words. We need action. These files could be released right now. We don't even need to go to the Senate. Donald Trump has the power to release them right now. But as a congressperson, as a senator, I hope you have a very crucial role to play here, and we ask that you do it. My sister ended up filing a lawsuit because of all of the failures in law enforcement in this case. She filed a notice of claims under Biden, and then the lawsuit was finally filed this year, and it's really to highlight those systemic failures in this case. And this is a chance for the government to do something different, right? This doesn't have to be a failure. This could be a time when they say, "You're right. We're ready to do the right thing," and so we hope that is the outcome that we get today.
Well, you all released a PSA, one of the most powerful PSAs I think I've ever seen earlier this week. And in that, at the end of it, it said 5 administrations. It wasn't just one. It wasn't just this president or this administration. In the past 5 administrations, has any president, has any attorney general sat down with you all?
No, no, really, until very recently, it was almost impossible to get any kind of communication with government officials in regards to any of this. And there've been, several things that have happened, even like related to the Maxwell trial, where, many of us believe we should be informed of things happening. Previously, when she was transferred, for example, to Tallahassee, I received an email saying that would happen before it happened. And this most recent prison transfer, we found out after the fact, right? In a delayed way. We found out from media, right? So it's just kind of an example of how poor communication has been, I think, throughout this case with the victims. And I think that's part of the problem, part of what we hope, to change with highlighting all of this.
Well, I also want to talk briefly about, because in the PSA you all mentioned that there are thousands, potentially more than 1,000 victims, and I think the public was pretty shocked when they heard about that. Could you talk a little bit about why many of them aren't public today?
Oh, sure. I'd actually love to address that because I think, you know, there's so many reasons why people might not be public in this case, and sometimes it is hard to hear, even when people are saying, oh, it's so great that you're public. It's like, I think that doesn't take into account other people's situations and why they might very wisely choose not to be. So thank you for that thoughtful question. When people were there at different times, saw different things, have information about different people, right? And so I think there are certain people who are just extremely fearful because of things that they saw or, people they encountered and have not felt safe to come forward. I also think it's just about, where people are in terms of the support they have at this time, what they have going on in their lives, through these last several years. And I think, and I think there's other people in other countries, that are not, that feel very concerned about their safety because of where they live, so there's a lot of reasons, but that is the estimate that the DOJ released was 1,000 victims. And so it is mind-boggling. I think about just the people I know, and now I've met several, right? Many, and to imagine that multiplied so many times is just really heartbreaking.
Now, Annie, before I let you go, if you had the opportunity to sit down with the president and the attorney general today, what would you tell them?
I'd say yesterday, you said that you were ready to sign the bill to release these files. You said you want to move on and get past this. The best way to do that is today to decide to release the files. That's within your power. If you want to move on from this, we need the information so that we can all regain trust in our government and move forward.
Annie Farmer, thank you so much and good luck today. We're all cheering you on.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And I just want to say we really appreciate your coverage of this case and giving voice to so many different survivors. So thank you.
Today's just the beginning of that fight. It's a long fight, and we're not going to stop. So thank you.